Hello?
Glad to be with you.
Hey, how are you, sir? How are you?
All is well. All is well. I'm joining you from Baltimore, Maryland this evening.
Be more. What's going on out there on the East Coast, man? Doctor, I have been following you, man. Caught you on the Breakfast Club. You had a great interview. But let's break it down to the audience real fast, because there's some things that I want to know. Number one is the Pan-African movement. A lot of people are not really clear. And it's generally a lot of people on the street who don't really know what that means or what that term is. And I see a lot of people use it loosely. Tell us exactly what that is.
Yes, sir. Pan-Africanism could be summarized briefly in 3 points. The first point is that all African people, all descendants of Africa, wherever they are in the world, irregardless of their religion, irregardless of their language, irregardless, of the culture that they practice, we are all members of the same African family. So whether you're in Nigeria speaking Yoruba, whether you're in Cuba speaking Spanish, whether you're in Brazil with Portuguese, whether you're in Chicago speaking Ebonics, we are one family, and we believe that we should identify with that family first before we identify with any other agency or organization. So we're never Christians who happen to be Africans. We're Africans who happen to be Christians. And the reason why the Africanity is primary is because it's the only organization we belong to that was chosen by God himself. Everything else you belong to, you chose. You chose your religion. You can leave it tomorrow. You chose to be a Mason. You chose to be a Greek. You chose to be a doctor. You chose to be a lawyer. Everything we belong to, we choose, but we don't choose our race.
That's very interesting. Dr. Umar, Dr. Johnson, I know that you get a lot of critical critiquing from other individuals who seem to think that what you're saying is and I hate to even use this term, but this is the only way I can define what I'm hearing. They're calling it racism. Why would they say that? Explain that to me.
Ignorance. And the ignorance comes from the fact that when you say Pan-African nationalism, people automatically assume that you mean the reverse of white nationalism. Now, we know that historically there can be no white nationalism without a hatred for black people. Because wherever there has been white nationalists, there has been a rejection of African people. So when we say Pan-African nationalism, or other brothers would say black nationalism, people assume they must be the reverse of the Ku Klux Klan. They must be the reverse of the white knights. Nothing could be further from the truth. I do not have to hate you in order to embrace myself. So, for example, the Breakfast Club interview, what's getting a lot of attention now is the fact that I said that I have a difficult time respecting black men who are not committed to black women.
I heard that.
And people say, well, how could you say that? I could say that because, number one, that's my position. See, within Pan-Africanism as Garveyites, we don't believe in interracial marriage. But we don't believe in interracial marriage not for the same reasons as a white nationalist. A white nationalist doesn't believe in interracial marriage because he thinks white people are better than black people, and that to mix with us is to downgrade their own genetics. But when we say that a black man shouldn't date a white woman, we're not saying it because we consider the white woman to be inferior. We're saying it because we love black women, i.e., only 1 out of every 4 black women in America get married. Black women are the last married and the first divorced. Right now, we got millions of black women with raising children on their own, single-parent households, no daddy. So for us, we say the black man should be with a black woman, not because we hate the white woman, but we know that if we're going to save our own community, it starts with the black man being committed to his own woman first.
Okay, Farouk Abdul-Basir.
Doc, man, I know you've heard a bunch of times you even kind of look like Marcus Garvey a little bit, but tell us, give us you were mentioning black families. Give us a state or your opinion of the state of black families right now. Like, why are marriages not lasting in the black community? What do you think is the issue with that?
Okay. The disintegration of the black family in America intensified in 1970. 1970 was the decade that America used to make the black man economically irrelevant to the black woman. That is very key. If you want to understand the disintegration of the black family, you have to look at how the black man was made economically irrelevant for the black woman. Keep in mind, we're the only men in America whose women out-educate and out-earn us as a population. We're the only ones.
Okay.
The absolute only ones. And so what happened was in the 1970s, the United States government started economically castrating black men, financially effeminizing black men by taking away all the trade skills out the high schools, taking away all the factory jobs out of the neighborhoods. Remember, up until this week, in your neighborhood, a decent factory job, good paying wage, good benefits, good retirement, and for many of us, our great-great-grandparents, they never had college degrees. Some of them never even finished high school, but they still lived decent lives because there was life wage paying jobs available at the time. All that's gone now. And so while they began to take away economic opportunity from black males, which was intensified in the 80s with the crack and in the 90s with the Bill Clinton crime bill, they began to systematically mass educate black women and employ them. This was done on purpose to destabilize the traditional two-family household, which normally has the man as the economic breadwinner and then the woman as the one who would basically take care of home. Well, that's changed all the way around. Now it's the woman who's the breadwinner, and it's the black man who's home, not because he wants to be, but because after he gets that felony on his record, nobody's looking to hire him.
Dr. Umar Johnson, there's so many different topics I want to hit on, but let me ask you this, sir. With mixed children, interracial relationships have bred, a lot of mixed children. And one of our co-hosts is a mixed child as well. I want to introduce you to her, Johanna Leah. Johanna?
So, couple questions. Don't you think society possibly just portrays that? I mean, because the idea of even in our culture today, we can just go from the weaves, generally speaking, hair doesn't come out silky straight, and yet we're going to go put weaves in our hair to look a certain way, to identify with a different race that's not ours. No, we don't go to a salon and say, hey, I want the Afro puff weave. So what is it that we get away from black women, but why? I mean, being mixed descent, I identify as a mixed girl, and I understand the issues that can come, sometimes not understanding backgrounds or not having the same background, but what is it about just loving a person versus loving a color, a creed, a religion? Why are we so stuck on the separation versus just the love aspect?
Well, first of all, when you are a member of a particular racial or cultural group that is under attack, you have an obligation to protect that group. And so with black people having been earmarked, I would argue, for extermination in this country, because, see, we've had 4 great periods of struggle in America. Our first struggle was for humanity. Our first 200 years in America during slavery was a fight to prove that we were people. And a lot of us forget that. Some people go straight to the fight to end slavery. Before there could be a fight to end slavery, there had to be a fight to end the popular belief in the white American mind that African people were not human beings. Remember, we were considered chattel. And American chattel slavery is the first and only slavery in human history that actually stripped its victims from their humanity. And that's what makes our slavery different from all the other slaveries that have ever existed. So there was a fight for humanity. Then it was a fight for liberty from slavery. And then there was a fight for equality. And now we're in our 4th and most dangerously critical fight, and that is a fight for survival. And when you want to destroy your people, it begins in the homes. So if you want to dismantle black people, you got to dismantle the black family. So if we know that we must have an obligation and a loyalty to ourselves to protect who we are. So listen, I should be able to marry who I want. I should be able to date who I want. Under normal circumstances, maybe that would be okay. But guess what? We're not under normal circumstances and have for 400 years. When your family is under attack, you don't try to ignore it. We're not rallying around black women to save our family. We're doing as much as we can to run away from them. See, for people who say that love is blind, then I always ask the question, if love is blind, explain to me why black men are more likely to marry outside of their race than all other men in the United States put together as a percentage. If love is blind, why is it so blind for the black male and not as blind for any other man? There must be something else at work within the Negro psyche that is leading him in excess of any other male to crave that white woman's hand in marriage. And I would argue that it is the self-hatred.
Well, okay, so let me just give you my background really quick. I am first generation African American. My father was born in Sudan. He doesn't even identify with an African American male. I mean, he acts like it's just the end of, well, rest in peace, Dad, but the end of the earth. And then my mother is 100% Greek, adopted at birth to a Jewish family, and she identifies as Jewish. So I guess my question is, though, too, in most black families, marriage is not pressed. I can say in white families, I'll put it like this: with my son, I was engaged to his father, but we got engaged during pregnancy. But I was shunned for coming home pregnant and not married with a child in a white Jewish family. Like that, you just don't do that. So it doesn't seem like I've been around any, or even on my father's side, but I mean, my father's side is African and they're mostly in Africa, but I haven't been around families that marriage is pushed and stressed within the home and within the family.
Within the culture either, though, correct?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Well, there's reasons for that, too. And one thing we have to be very clear about is that for many black men, we recognize that the United States government and the American social order has never been a friend of ours. So we do not seek to validate marriage by getting any contract whatsoever from the U.S. government. So I'm saying to say that there are millions of black men committed to black women, but would not statistically be counted as such because they did not marry the state. Because in essence, when you marry and you get your license to get married, you're in essence marrying the state. You're being legitimized and validated by the same government that enslaved your ancestors. So a lot of black men, I have a lot of friends, professional black men included, doctors, lawyers, so be it. I'm a doctor myself of clinical psychology, who would never even consider marrying the state. They marry, and they marry within the culture, and they marry within the community, and they marry their wife, and everyone's aware of it, and they have a ceremony. They even have a marriage contract, but they do not marry the state. So we got to recognize that statistically, a lot of committed houses exist that would not be counted because they did not marry the state.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Umar Johnson, Wildcat has a question for you, but before we get to that, I want to ask you this. When we speak about black culture, there's something that I see that's so prevalent. Everybody sees it, whether you're from Chicago or not. That's the violence, that's the ignorance, that's the impatient attitude of what I like to think is just the adolescent youth. But what, from your perspective, is the answer? Because you're basically preaching to the choir, those who understand how to develop and what the development of the culture means. But you also have a generation or generations who just don't care. How do you get them to care?
Well, first of all, we got to be very clear about something. Children are never responsible for their own dysfunction.
Okay.
Whenever you find dysfunctional children, a dysfunctional generation, they can't possibly be responsible for that because they're children.
Okay.
And as a child is taught, so is his thoughts. What we see going on in Chicago, which is just an exaggerated version of what's going on all around black America, and you're basically looking at a whole generation of youth, okay, who are totally dysfunctional because their parents and their community and their churches and their community organizations and their black businesses did nothing to teach them about who they are, where they are, and what they must do for themselves. Our children are proverbially walking around without a head on their bodies because we abandoned them. We abandoned them to the public school system. We abandoned them to the juvenile detention systems. We abandoned them to a life of teenage unemployment. I mean, the black child has the most difficult job of finding employment. Statistically, most businesses in America would hire a child who doesn't even speak English before they hire a black child as a result of racism and as a result of stereotypes sometimes of which we play into.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Our children are our fault. They are what we allow them to be. And to be honest with you, nothing could have come at a worse time for Black America than social media. Because now every type of negative image, every type of negative belief, every stereotype that's out there about Black people is now being broadcast into our children's minds 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. I mean, when you scroll through your Facebook and you scroll through Instagram, we're not even using these devices to empower ourselves. We're using these devices to intensify the self-hate and character assassinations against each other.
You know, you make a very good point, and one of them recognize what self-hate is. You know, Wildcat, go ahead.
Brother Johnson, man, I watch you. I follow a lot of the things you're doing, and I love what you're doing. That's the problem with us as a people. You could say human race. I don't consider myself an African American. I believe I'm an African in America. And I think the problem is we don't know enough about our history. When I graduated from high school and went to college, that's when I found out who I was. My parents didn't know. I had no education of myself and what I've been through. Most of the education that we get, it starts free. That's when they say, okay, so when we first came here, like we just first came to the earth.
That's why history begins with
That's
slavery.
the problem. With social media, I go down my timeline all the time. If you're doing anything negative, anything disrespectful, I just delete you. So I think that, you know, America, and especially, you know, the Black race, it's a baby. It's gonna eat what you feed it. So feed it something right, and that's the problem with the homes. My parents, not to talk bad about them, but we don't know enough about ourselves, and history repeats itself because there's not enough people to study history. So I just appreciate what you're doing, brother. Keep doing it.
Go ahead.
I appreciate that, and that takes us to this. There's a pyramid of pain in Black America.
Pyramid
and
of pain. That's
a pyramid of pain. Okay. And I'll give you the 3 points on that pyramid. Point number one, and they're in no order because they're equally important. One is psychological homelessness.
Okay. All right.
The reason why Black people celebrate July 4th more than white folks probably do is because we're trying to validate within our own minds this false notion that we're Americans. We're not. Everyone knows it, including us. We're not treated like Americans.
Yeah.
If Trayvon Martin was an American, he would still be alive. If Philando Castile was an American, he would still be alive. So you got this issue of psychological homelessness where African people who unquestionably are not American and have never been treated as such and never will be, know it, but because they hate who they really are as African people, they go out of their way to overcompensate for an identity that they know don't really exist. So this past 4th of July, so Black folks with a red, white, and blue on, head all wrapped up, and I'm just looking at this like, my goodness, you would actually wear that? Do you know what that flag has represented to African people historically? But again, we know we're not white, but we don't want to be Black. And that's the psychological homelessness piece. The second issue is the inferiority complex of African people. One of the biggest reasons why we haven't done more with what we have is because psychologically, collectively, the collective consciousness of Black folks, we feel inferior to white people. And the reason it's hard for us to overcome this racial inferiority complex is we don't even want to admit it's there. So, for example, last year, Black women spent $9 billion on weave and perm. $9 billion. Okay, that's more than the total GNP of 20% of the countries on the African continent, and this is what Black women spent on hair. Now, they'll go out of their way to look like white women and then tell you that they don't have an inferiority complex. Or the Black man who marries white women more than any other non-white man in America, but he will tell you he doesn't have an inferiority complex. So that psychological inferiority is a very sensitive topic with us because we never have the conversation. And then the third point on that pyramid is emotional defeatism. We are an emotionally defeated people when it comes to racism. 9 out of every 10 Black people, although they will never admit it, believe it is almost impossible for Black people to overcome the trials and tribulations of racism that has been put in front of us. Most of us are defeated. This is why we don't want to.
Doctor, give that stat again.
This is why we move away from black people. Yes, sir.
Give that stat again. 9 out of 10 people are.
9 out of 10 black people do not believe it's possible for us to overcome the barriers of racism and actually become an independent community in this country as the Jews are, as the Arabs, the Chinese,
but the Jews were persecuted.
They don't think it's possible for us to create that reality for ourselves.
Go ahead, Johanna. You want to say, Johanna?
Yeah, well, but this is where I get confused, because Jews were persecuted in 1938, and it was a pretty strong persecution as well. And for whatever reason, I mean, pick up, carry on, know the history, and are okay. Like, when as a race do we stop and say, okay, you know what, this happened to us, we're going to keep moving forward? But the problem is the ignorance. It's when we don't want to get up, when we don't want to educate ourselves, when we don't want to work hard. That's when we become statistics. But I don't see one person in this room that should be treated any differently based on, I mean, they're well spoken, well put together, has a head on their shoulders. I mean, like, I just feel like we're throwing ourselves. I mean, obviously you're a very, very well spoken man. You're a doctor. You've worked very hard. You've educated yourself. Who's going to turn around and tell you, no, and you can't? And guess what? It happens all day. Like, when do we leave the fact that we're black and take that out of it and just say we're going to keep plowing through?
You can't take that out of it. Right. You can't take that out.
But my father is African and doesn't even identify with anything.
No, but your father is an African immigrant. He's not an African who's a descendant of enslaved Africans. And the reason, although we're all family from a Pan-Africanist perspective, the reason I have to draw that distinction is because African immigrants are not considered threats to the American social order. And the reason African immigrants are not considered threats to the American social order is because they can be deported. In fact, the only non-white people in America who cannot be deported are the descendants of enslaved Africans. We have no place to be sent. Slavery destroyed the psychological connection that African Americans had to Africa. So you can't deport us back to Sudan or Ghana or Nigeria or Ethiopia because the white man ironically destroyed the very thing he needed to get us out of here. Now, so how do you get rid of 50 million people who you don't want? You have to systematically exterminate them from within.
Now, it's interesting you say that. Earlier today, I was watching a news report that came on, and it was something that was going on down in one of the southern states. And they were protesting taking down this monument, which had some negative images because it was
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Exactly. And they interviewed one of the Ku Klux Klan members who were marching in this. And one of the things that stood out to me, he was like, if you people don't like it, y'all can just leave. Why don't y'all just leave? It wasn't a resolution of ideas or differences. But what got me was the fact that he said, you should just leave. And that bothered me because we never asked to be over here in the first place.
The first place. Not only that, white people need to be very careful about telling black people to go home. And the reason I say they need to be very careful about telling black people to go home, because if we told white people to go home, they don't have one to go to. And I'm not being disrespectful, but the European is not indigenous to a single continent on this planet, including Europe. He doesn't have an original home. In fact, Europe is not even a continent. Europe is Western Asia. But the reason he carved it out and made it a continent so he can give the false notion that he actually has a home on this earth.
Wow. All right, real fast, Fruit. Go ahead.
All right, Doc, I got a quick one. What percentage of, if there's any percentage of our situation do we play in the way we are now, us meaning black folks? And also, piggyback off of that, is there any liability with the music that's being put out by these record companies right now? Is there anything that adds to the situation that we're in now?
Oh, without question. Here's the thing. One of the paradigms that we have to shift away from is we have this paradigm where if you say white people are responsible for the problems black people have, then it also means white people are responsible for solving them. And then we have another paradigm that says if you say black people are responsible for the problems that we have, then black people must also solve them. I think both of those are incorrect. The truth of the matter is every problem we have was created by white folk, every last one. If you look at all the major problems we have, we don't control none of those systems, not one. Look at miseducation. We don't control the school system. Look at mass incarceration. We don't control the criminal justice system. Look at unemployment. We don't control the economy. Look at health care. We don't control the medical establishment. You cannot be the cause of your problems because you don't control none of the institutions that create and maintain them. However, you have 100% responsibility for solving your own problems, and we can do it. We are $1 trillion people. Again, black women, $9 billion on hair in 2016. Black men, $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on malt liquor. We bought twice the Mercedes-Benzes as white people bought in 2016, but yet white people have 2 and 3 times the wealth of black folks. If we wanted to fix this, we could. But again, our identity crisis is central to why we can't reverse it. When it comes to America, no, they're not white. Everyone else who comes to America, no, they're not white. But black people have this thing where we feel that America owes us something. I agree. She does owe us reparations, but you'll never get it until you first give yourself internal reparations. You must fix yourself before you get any outside help to carry it on.
Wow, now that's deep. Dr. Umar Johnson, we have to have you on the show again so that we can continue to have some conversation and dialogue because, you know, facts are facts. You know, I know that our communities are definitely in a situation that is, in my opinion, dire. If there was one answer or one thing to do, then we probably would have done it. But you do have a lot of individuals who feel like it's not my problem, it's not affecting me, it's nothing, you know, why should I worry about it? Dak, you had a quick question, brother?
Man, I agree with you, Dr. Umar, but I think as a people that we need to start taking accountability of what we do, our own self-hate. And we need to. And we
no one's going to solve this but us.
Right, and we have to stop looking for assimilation and start looking for more respect.
Yes, we do.
And we got to stop thinking that black spending power is power. It's about building wealth, generational wealth.
Doctor,
and we need to protect our men need to protect our women better, and women need to nurture their men better and their babies because toxic fruits come from toxic roots.
There you go, Doc. There's so many different equations and levels to this.
Let me drop one more jewel if I could.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Doctor.
One of the things that keeps us trapped into not creating our own cultural reality, if you notice, every culture that comes to America comes to build a cultural empire. The Chinese are here to build a cultural empire. The Arabs, the East Indians, we don't, because we are trapped in a multicultural consciousness that is strangling us psychologically, politically, emotionally, and socially. We don't want anything exclusively black. And part of the reason we don't want anything exclusively black is we have been conditioned, indoctrinated, and brainwashed by church. Yes, religion.
Oh, yeah, we need to step away from religion.
That wanting anything just for black people is wrong. And as a result of that, we're always looking to share in with other people who absolutely can't stand our guts. And we won't wake up to the reality that if we're going to have a future for our babies, we have to secure it for them. We believe that is something wrong with fighting for black people. We believe we got to fight for all people. And that right there is the quicksand that keeps us stuck.
Yeah, we do worship religion more than we worship God.
And I think it's important to know that fighting to save your black culture doesn't mean you hate other cultures.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not at all. First of all, you can't find no evidence of black people system. See, here's when white folks say you're reverse racist, I ask them real simply, have black people ever created a disease to systematically exterminate your culture? Have they ever done that? Have black people ever created a biological weapon? Have we ever created an atomic bomb? Have we ever systematically enslaved another people just because of their race? Are we guilty of ever dehumanizing another human population? When you look at what Europeans have done to black folks, I find it audacious for them to turn around and accuse us of being who they are with absolutely no evidence to support that claim.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Umar Johnson, where can people follow you or catch up with you?
Yes, sir. The website, drumarjohnson.com, DRUMAR Johnson.com. They can link with me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson. The Facebook is Dr. Umar E. Fatunde, and the phone number is 844 Dr. Umar. Again, it's 8444 Dr. Umar. And I just want your parents to know that we still do the Black Parent Teleconference every Tuesday morning, 6 to 8. Free answers for black parents, 857-232-0158. And the access code is 870-864-POUND.
Now, that's when you know somebody is serious, because people don't give you the phone numbers if they're not for Doctor, we definitely want to have you back on the show. I hope you will definitely accommodate us. And whenever you're in Chicago, please, let's make sure we have you in and just, get that energy, because the information is what's important. Making sure people hear it, and it's going to take a while for a lot of people to filter it, because everybody sort of has their own process. But Doctor, I want to ask you this one question in closing. When you look at the city of Chicago and what's going on here, is there one answer alone that will help us?
Well, first of all, what's going on in Chicago is by design. Okay, whenever you want to make it look like it needs to be saved. So the violence and everything else going on in Chicago has been systematically engineered with the unemployment, systematically engineered with the economic desperation, systematically engineered with the poverty. You can create chaos by manipulating the variables that people need in order to survive. The reason Donald Trump is calling in the troops and everyone else to Chicago is because they're trying to ethnically cleanse Chicago. That decision was made over 10 years ago. Chicago, as well as Detroit, are the two Midwestern cities that must be taken back by white folks. This is nothing but a purge that is being disguised as a war against crime.
But Dr. Johnson, I have to ask you this, and just looking at it objectively, I understood that point. I've heard that point before. But when you have, my man on the corner who pulls out a gun and shoot because he's mad, there's no system that has made him shoot. That's his own by his
How
design.
did the gun get there?
I mean, he still made the decision, though, Doctor.
But black men need more
That's
emotional
true, but
discipline,
there's primary responsibility and there's secondary responsibility.
Okay.
Primary responsibility is for the person who even made the opportunity for crime available. Who brought the guns in?
But
and why
nobody
isn't
forced
that
him
being
to go
tried?
buy the
Who brought the drugs in? Yes, but if the gun was never there, he could have never bought it. Once again, we are skipping
crack
past
is
the
readily
person
available.
who
I
has
don't use
primary
it.
responsibility, and we're going straight to those with secondary responsibility. Yes, he was wrong. Yes, he has to take responsibility. But if the white man never brought the guns in and crack in Chicago in the first place, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Right, and I understand that, but okay, the crack, the guns are here. For instance, someone broke into my car. It was a black dude, took all my stuff out of the car. I can't blame.
And why did he break into your car? He broke into your car because he couldn't find a job.
Or he was hooked on drugs for some reason. We don't know.
And why was he hooked on drugs? Because the drugs was there. And why did he feel he needed to use the drugs in the first place? Because of the stress of economic deprivation. Remember,
I understand that.
when a man cannot fulfill the responsibility of being a man, i.e. caregiver to his women and children, that is a very psychological, stressful situation.
It is.
Being a therapist, I know that men go to drugs, they go to alcohol, they go to heroin, they go to the cigarettes because they're struggling with the fact that I'm supposed to be a man, but I can't even function as one economically.
Dr.
It
Umar.
breeds that.
I mean, I understand, but see, Dr. Umar, and I understand completely what you're saying. When I get up and I go to work in the morning, I see the women on the bus stops going to school, going to work. I see the brothers at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock hanging out on the corners during the day.
And why is that? Because they don't have a father to teach them to be responsible. And why don't they have a father? Because the fathers are in jail, pushed out the home, whatever the situation may be. It's all systematic.
Now, even though it's systematic, there has to be a point.
Let's go back. Let's go back. 60 years ago.
Okay.
Who was selling the drugs? Who was running the guns? Who was the gangbangers? Who was
60 years ago, it wasn't black people.
Jewish
It wasn't.
immigrants.
Right.
Jewish immigrants.
Okay.
Italian immigrants.
But
and Irish immigrants. They were doing the same things in Chicago that black men are doing today.
Now,
what changed that? I'll tell you what changed.
Okay.
In 1940, the United States government upgraded Jews, Irish, and Italians to white status. Prior to 1940, they were not considered white. And as a result of giving them the white status in 1940, they gave the Irish the police departments in America's major cities. They gave the Italian the fire departments in America's major cities. And they gave the European Jews the civil service municipal jobs in most of America's major cities that they still control to this very day. In other words, gentlemen and sisters, they gave them an economic stimulus package. When are we going to give our economic stimulus package? All men commit crime when they're miseducated and economically castrated. The black man is not unique. It just appears to be so because we're not putting this within a historical context.
I mean, I understand the historical context, but I still got to ask the question. My man makes a decision to stick a gun in my face, even though now the guns are here, and I agree with you, all of that. But there has to be a point where we, okay, let's set this axis and let's turn it. But if you got individuals who won't even acknowledge it and turn it,
but you keep saying individuals. This is not an individual problem
or system.
This is systematic.
Okay.
And the problem with us as a people, we never solve problems because whenever there's a systematic issue, we want to take it to individual moral responsibility. It's bigger than that.
Okay.
If I am hungry and my 2 daughters need to eat, morals have nothing to do with the fact that I got to bust in your car and steal from you to sell something to feed my children. The large question is, why didn't my community create an economic reality for me? Keep in mind, y'all, we give the black church $14 million every Sunday. 14. Look at all the black churches in Chicago. And guess what? I haven't seen a politician. I haven't seen a community leader. I haven't seen a journalist in any city in America step to the black clergy and ask them, what are you doing to create jobs in our community?
Good point.
How can we let an institution that takes so much give us so little in return?
No, good point. Good point. I do $14 million every Sunday. That's a lot of money. But it doesn't. I can't. I can't.
I mean, all they care about is pastors rolling up nice, and they built this mega church.
Happy people don't kill people. Happy people don't kill people. Miserable people. Crime is not just a function of opportunity and necessity. It is also a function of one's psychological state. So, happy people don't kill. Right. Cool. Give these brothers a decent education. Give them a livable wage job, and half of this stuff will go away. Let these boys' fathers out of prison so they can come back home and raise their sons, and you will begin to see changes. But as long as we ignore the systematic and just focus on people's individual moral responsibility, we'll never change this. Because the mother of all crime is miseducation, and the father of all crime is economic castration. And it doesn't matter how many Sundays you've been to church. When your opportunities get shut, you get desperate, and when you get desperate, people begin to die.
Dr. Umar Johnson, real fast.
But Doc, what do we do to break our generational curses, which is really generational pathological thinking?
Number one, we got to stop focusing on the adults too much. To be honest, I think we're spending too much time trying to change grown people, and at the same time, you got a whole generation, millions of black kids in Chicago who are not being given the type of education and opportunities that will prevent them from making some of the mistakes that we made or that the previous generation made. We spend 80% of our time and resources trying to change grown people. I'm a psychologist. I can tell you, most grown folks will never change. True. It's hard to change who you are when you've been doing certain things for a long time. So forget about them and put that 80% energy on the 15-year-olds and the 16-year-olds and the 12-year-olds. There's an African proverb that says, every time a baby is born, that's God's message to black people that he hasn't given up on us yet. We still got time to fix this, but we got to focus on the children as opposed to spending all of our time on their grandparents and parents.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much, man.
Love you, Doc.
I appreciate it, man. Really do.
Thanks again. Appreciate y'all. And one last thing to my sister, ain't no such thing as biracial. If one of your parents is African, you African. Why? Because the European DNA is recessive. African DNA is dominant. When you mix chocolate milk and vanilla milk, you don't get half vanilla milk, you get chocolate milk. So you just as African as the rest of us, and I don't.
But I just don't like to not identify. My mother was the one who raised me. My mother was the one who taught the black girl to go to school. My mother was the one who made sure her morals were in line, and she did what she was supposed to. So I can't take that away from her.
Mother. You don't reject your mother. That's your mother. You never reject your mother, but you're an African with a white mother. There is no mix. There is no biracial, and never has been until recent time. This whole new identity matrix that they got black people fighting through, am I biracial? Am I multiracial? Am I non-racial? Am I part-racial? That's just a new strategy of divide and conquer, separate and rule, confuse black people with a whole bunch of new labels so they don't realize they black, so it becomes easier to isolate and dispose of us. If one of your parents are African, you are African, and that is nature's design.
Dr. Umar Johnson, thank you so much, man. We definitely,
family.
I would love to talk more with you. Let's make sure we do this again, please.
Next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Umar Johnson.
Take care,
all right, man. Take care. All right, this is Johnny Starks, a.k.a. Cool Out. This is Cool Out Radio, man. Wow, the phones are even hitting.
Yeah, everybody got something to say about it. And hey, we could talk all day about it, but
we just can't
take care of your own. Take care of your own, and everybody will be all right.
I mean,
can I say this? That was the most 100 segment that I've ever been a part of on this show. Straight up. Yes, 100%.
And it was like 60% to me.
I'm like, what was 100 about it? Like, at the end of the day, my son, okay, so that's like saying my son was not beaten in slavery. He was not out in the field. He was not doing X, Y, and Z. I'm teaching him to work hard, get your education. If you're talented in something outside of school, keep that going so you have other avenues for college. Do things to get yourself past it. He doesn't walk around feeling persecuted. I'm not instilling in him there isn't anything you can't achieve. I'm not instilling in him, pay attention for the white man who might be racist towards you. I'm not allowing that. Now, if God forbid something should happen, that's called life. But teaching that in a home, making him feel less of a human being, not giving him tools that he can use to go from a boy to a man, and I'm a woman doing it.
Well, I think the point that Dr. Umar Johnson was making is the things we have to do in order to save the community as a whole. As a parent, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
But too, like when you hear
let me ask you a
good
question.
Education. Listen, I've worked very hard to make sure he's in a school district with good education.
No one is taking that away from him. But my question is this: what have you taught him in order to help the community in a whole, in general? You've taught him how to succeed and how to do what he has to do to be respectful, how to treat people. But where Dr. Umar is coming from is a bigger picture. It's not individual. It's a bigger picture.
Well, he's taught to be a good person within society.
Right. So
sometimes it does take individuals, because I was very quiet on this whole thing, but
I know, Lisa.
No problems because I didn't want to disrespect him. Or cut him off. I do agree with many of his values, but it doesn't matter to me. I think it's fine to embrace whatever you are, and I think people should that's where we need to start as individuals. There are bad people out there, but just because some white people did something doesn't make everybody white bad. And me being an example, I've been in the urban community working my butt off for over 25 years, and because of where I work, most of the charities and foundations I work with are inner city, more urban than suburban, or whatever you want to call it, more black, African American, whatever you want to label it as. And I've helped many people. I've never told anybody no, but because of where I work. And so what if I happen to meet somebody and we click? So, Lisa, we appreciate all the help. We appreciate you just getting millions of dollars with these pastors and with all these charities, but you're white. We can't accept you. No. So that's exactly what it is. Why can't we just go back to the human race? My 4 grandparents were from 4 different countries.
We understand that.
So I have 4 different cultures that I'm embracing.
Okay, but what happens is you have to look at the bigger picture. Take your personal self out of it, because
it's not being personal. No. Because how can you not take it personal?
Well, let me explain. Let me just say my point. He's speaking in a systematic,
and I understand. Right. I'm not.
So it doesn't mean white people aren't good people. Doesn't mean white people are bad people. It just means the system is set up, and it has been set up.
Right, but he just said, why can't we look out for our own? So, Lisa, we love you. Thank you for doing this, but you don't meet other people because of what you're doing.
Because our nation needs growth. Because we're the ones that are out here dying.
But if I'm working, if I'm working 7 days a week,
we're the ones that are in jails, that are at an excessively high rate. We're the ones that are suffering.
I know a lot of people that have robbed people, black and white, that have had money. I know somebody that was a top comedian that just liked to steal from people, and he has millions of dollars and has both parents.
But this is what the doc was saying. You're speaking more individually compared to the grand scheme of things.
But if we came together like that and made it as individuals, it takes individuals to build this up. Why can't we just do this together as humans?
It does take individuals. He's doing one thing. He's speaking from one perspective. You're speaking from a different perspective. Your perspective is not any less valuable than his, but he's talking from a perspective of, as a whole, our communities are dying. It's not.
But like the guy said, I'm sorry.
As a community, we're dying. How do we stop that? Because it has to be an inner psychological thing. And it's not to say what you're doing isn't good or isn't right, but we have to take accountable as a community and say, okay, we're failing. We're not.
But
you're
a unique person. I understand. But the reality of it is racism is real. It still exists. You can't.
No doubt. I'm not disagreeing with
that.
You
can't just brush it away that it doesn't exist. You can't just say, because.
But it exists with everybody too. I'm Jewish. I get anti-Semitic comments all the time.
You specifically, it's about.
I understand.
And the way to improve that would be your family, their
Correct.
friends, and all them.
Everybody's
Once
families.
them and those people that are in power decide that, okay, racism isn't cool, we probably shouldn't be doing these black people like this anymore. What have they done to us? Once they decide to change their ways, and once we as black people take our onus on ourselves to improve ourselves, then things will start to improve. But what the doctor was saying was not a direct shot at you specifically.
I get it.
It was a direct shot at
I understand, but we still have to make what happened things in the past, that's encountered things in the past. I didn't do it. My family didn't do it. Let's move forward and make changes together.
But
I don't hate every German
Lisa,
person that I meet.
But that's the point. We say let's move forward.
Let's move forward.
But the African community cannot move forward until they get a grasp of who they are and the past. Then they can move forward. So it's not saying let's not move forward.
But here's the reality.
Yes.
Here's the reality. This conversation happened for this has been going on for years. So last year we had the same conversation. The year before we had the same conversation. The year before that we had the same conversation. The year before that we had the same conversation. At what point do we stop? And like the doctor said, it starts with the youth.
Here's the thing.
So everyone at this table, so if there's 7 of us, 8 of us, 10 of us, however many people are in this room right now, when do we take accountability for our children, what we're teaching them, the school environment that we put them in? Mm-hmm. Are we putting them in the diverse communities that propel success? Are we putting them in environments where they can meet a Jewish woman, they can meet an Asian kid, they can meet a Hispanic kid, and everyone's getting the same thing and everyone's fighting for the same right, which is education and growth?
I understand exactly what you're saying, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
So when you're not working hard, when you're not looking for jobs, when you're turning to welfare, when you're turning to be a statistic, because like Kel said, the gun may be brought here. Whoever dropped the gun off, the purple man dropped the gun off. That doesn't mean the black man has to go use it.
No, it doesn't. You're absolutely right.
So
but here's the thing. With this, and let me just put this in perspective because we have to go to break because people want to talk about this and it's a very emotional subject. But for 400 years, African Americans, black people have been enslaved. For all of that time, we have been trying to be treated as equal.
I don't feel enslaved.
Oh, let me finish. Wait a minute. You don't have to feel in slavery, but that's disrespectful to say you don't feel that way or not to respect the fact that they were slaves because without them, we would not be here. We didn't ask to be over here. And not only that, but for 400 years, we have been trying to be treated equal. And you know what happens? It only happened in the last 50 years that we got some sense of that. 50 years from 400. So what we're seeing now, we're only at the beginning of just understanding who we are and what we are. Mm-hmm. And what you guys are saying are absolutely true. There's more than one definition. There's more than one experience. But we cannot think that it is going to be okay if we start from here and everything just moves forward because I cannot become who I am. It's just like this. I can't love you if I don't know how to love me
yourself.
first.
Yep. Exactly. Everybody's point is valid, but...
Well, so who doesn't at this table love? Who doesn't love themselves?
But that's not the point.
I'm loving myself.
But as a community, there's a lot of people that don't love themselves.
Right.
But that's in every race. So does that mean every race?
But every race has not been. This doesn't have the same history as the African Americans or the black people. But let's move on, guys. Thank you so much, Lisa.
We love you, Lisa.
And I'm doing a concert for somebody, for Christopher Williams, who happens to be black, and I'm not sleeping with him, but I'm just a promoter.
And just for those who know, Lisa E. is the only white person at the table who's like, wow, okay, what's going on? But it wasn't a conversation.
Well, and I understand. I'm not disagreeing. And I mean, I hate everything. I hate that my grandfather in Poland had to flee Poland with his brothers.
And that's terrible.
They were going to put them in the military when he was 12 years old. He had to leave Poland, never got to see his mother, father, or sister again. They don't know if the concentration camps got them. So I mean, we all have stories, and I cry for everybody. To me, I call it, there's one race, the human race. That's how I look at it. Not everybody looks at it like that.
Right.
But you know what? Again, that's why we have to sort of separate it because we all have personal experiences, but the Jewish community in whole is always.
Well, there's a lot of people in my Jewish community that's a whole nother thing too. That they look at different people. Okay. But I was very blessed to grow up in a community where we had everything. So my best friends are every culture, race, religion, orientation, and I love every one of them. And we all have our stereotypes.
But here's the thing I want to move on, is that the Jewish culture in the bigger picture does very well for themselves. They support each other.
Yeah, but unfortunately I was not one of those stereotypes. I was the only Jew at Hillcrest. All my friends went to HF, and I used to get stuff for that too.
So the Jewish people have their and it's not taking anything away. I'm just recognizing what's fact. They have industries, they have support, they have their own community, and they can self-provide for each other. The African American community doesn't have that at all. The Italians have it, the Irish have it, and it's not about why they have it and we don't. It's only
there's
because
no little Africa.
Right. There's just like, I mean, you for real. You have Chinatown, right? But it's just how does
what do you mean? We got the whole South Side. What are you talking
No,
about?
we don't own the whole South Side. You go to Chinatown, they own that.
But this is the problem. Black Americans need to understand they Americans. We have no place to go.
But that's his exact point. But it's also you still have to learn about yourself so that we can get
got
that.
So many races in us. We got
gotta
Irish,
understand.
Indian, and
we got to go to break. My producers.
we gotta understand it is one thing that brings us all together. Gas. Okay. That's it.
I was gonna say sex, but I mean,
Man, I thought you was gonna drop something deep.
No.
Let's get out of here.
Too deep.
But guys, first of all, let me tell you something. This is a very healthy conversation, and regardless of what your perspective is, have that conversation. I learned something new from other cultures. This is great to have. We don't have enough time to do it, but we'll have Dr. Umar Johnson on. We'll talk some more because maybe this is a way that we can help, or maybe we can inspire somebody to become the next leader. But I've always said that the next leader of the minority or the black community, and I shouldn't even call black minority because we're the majority almost, is going to have to be the one who speaks honestly. And when he speaks honestly, the community is going to ostracize him because they don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear the truth. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's fact is fact. I'm late all the time. I don't know if it's because I'm black or because I'm just lazy. I don't know, but I'm not. But the fact is I have to recognize that to be better at it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm better at being on time. All right, but on that note, Farouk Abdul-Basir.
100.
Johanna Leah.
So I'm shouting out Noel. He has someone ill in the hospital, and I just want to say I'm sending all my prayers and love from the Cool Out Show to you.
Yeah, prayers to you. Brian Wildcat Smith.
Do it.
Kels Coleman.
You know what? My grandmother was German. My dad is clear. My mom is caramel.
Did you say your dad is clear?
And I'm hazelnut.
Oh, wow. I didn't know clear was a color.
And none of my money went to that $9 billion industry.
Bam.
Lisa E.
Well, I know one thing. Music has no color, so I'm inviting everyone out to the Promontory on July 25th. Christopher Williams will be there. He wants to sing to everybody.
Really?
So yeah, so whatever.
Does he sing to mixed people? Does he sing to mixed people?
He's gonna sing mixed up people, whatever you want. Everybody, bipolar, everybody. We just want to see everybody grown and sexy.
Yeah.
Come on out. We're gonna actually show New Jack City.
Okay.
Beforehand, and it's just gonna be a grown and sexy adult party, and then he's going to perform and sing all his classics.
All right, and we'll give away a pair of tickets.
We'll give away.
Can I say this before?
Go to break.
Lisa.
We got to go to break, guys.
Okay, Lisa, I grew up thinking you were black for years. And then when I met you in person, I was like...
Remind me to tell you something when we get off the air. I can't say that.
I just thought you were light-skinned for years.
Everybody thought I was black or Hispanic. So.
Well, we're going to give away a pair of tickets to see Christopher Williams. Make sure you stay locked.
I'm pale.
You good, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. I agree with everything everybody's saying, but we got to start fixing ourselves.
You're right about that.
I'm dead serious. We look at African people don't look at us as African. Like her father, he don't look at us as African. When I look at her, I see a black woman. I don't see biracial. My mother biracial. I don't see y'all as that. I see black. I saw lips and hips, so you black to me. Your nose might be sharp, but you black to me.
That was slick. Lips and hips. I'm writing that down.
All right, you guys, we got to take a break. I'm Johnny Starks, a.k.a. Cool Out. Don't go anywhere. More Cool Out Radio. We'll be right back after this.
Cool Out Radio will be right back after these messages.